Good evening. I make that 7 o'clock on the dot, so we'll start proceedings. Welcome everybody to the Planning Committee on the 17th of June 2025. For those that may be watching us at home, good evening also to councillors and officers this evening. Moving swiftly on, do we have any apologies? No apologies. Thank you. Do you have any declarations of interest, item 2 on the agenda tonight? And I cannot see any identified, so that's a negative. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, those were held on the 20th of May 2025. Are we content to accept those minutes as a true and accurate record of proceedings that night? If so, can I see a show of hands, please? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. On to the first item of business that's substantive tonight, and that's application for major development, land off Lamphouse Way, Woolstanton, Markden Homes. I believe we have a presentation on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this application seeks to vary condition 2 of a previous application for 43 dwellings at land off Lamphouse Way in Woolstanton. So the application is to allow for changes to the site layout. So the layout on the left side is the approved layout for the scheme, and the one on the right is the new proposal seeking permission tonight. So the changes relate only to the northern section of the site, and it would result in an altered layout to plots 30 to 43, with the new layout being proposed around a new T-shaped section of highway, as opposed to the more linear arrangement approved under the original permission. So the number of detached, semi-detached and terrace properties would remain as originally approved, albeit with a different layout. Landscaping will be used around the new road layout, which will help to soften the overall visual impacts of the proposal. So there's not considered to be any concerns in respect to visual impact, given that the proposed layout is not significantly different to the original approval, and the proposal is also considered to be acceptable in respect of residential amenity and associated separation distances. Now, in respect of highways, it's noted that the new arrangement would feature a private road arrangement as opposed to an adopted highway. So we've had confirmation from the agent of the application, who's confirmed that the amended road layout was required following a review of the site by structural engineers who raised concerns that loads from the houses on the current approved scheme would have an adverse reaction on the existing retaining wall that's close to that part of the site. And the reason for the use of a private road is that the service pipes and infrastructure that would be placed under the new road and footpath don't comply with Staffordshire County Council standards. So this is a drawing that's been provided by the agent to demonstrate how bin collection distances would work. So it's in accordance with the bin collection distances required by building regulations. On the basis that the road layout is needed to facilitate, but the proposal is not being done for financial reasons, it's considered that it's a reasonable justification in this case. So we haven't received any objections to the scheme from residents or consultees, and the proposal is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. It's not indicated that we have any speakers on this item, so I'll send it over to members for comment. Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Frankly, I'm rather shocked by this application. And I'd like the office to explain a lot more about the structural reasons that have been put forward. As far as I can see, this is a straightforward piece of money grubbing. What we're doing is we're saying we'll have a private road. It will cost less to construct. And we are, of course, putting residents at an inconvenience they would not have otherwise. If we had a proper adopted highway, a refuse vehicle would drive down there, people will put their bins out at the edge of their curtilage, and they would have their bins collected. In this case, that's not going to be the case. People are going to have to drag their bins. And again, let's remember that we should double all those distances because you've got to take your bin there and you've got to bring your bin back again. This is a retrograde proposal. We've got a perfectly reasonable proposal in front of us, and as I say, I'd be very interested in hearing what the officer has to say about the structural aspects of this. But this was approved, so one assumes that all of those things were there in the first place. So what I see here is just a stepping back, a rather cynical approach to all of this. And I would say that if that is the case, we should refuse this on poor design. The MPPF, paragraph 139, says very firmly, things which are badly designed shouldn't be refused. I have not heard tonight, perhaps I will change my mind if I hear more detail, but I have not heard tonight any reason why this is an improvement. I think it's a step back. And I don't see why, as a step back, we should approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Any other members wishing to speak before I ask officers to return on that? Councillor Gordon.
Well, I can only echo what Councillor Fear has said. I am surprised, really, by the application. This site has been under consideration for development for some considerable time. And I think to come along at this stage and claim, that there are major sort of structural reasons that we need to change the layout in the way that is suggested. And I am concerned, Mr. Chairman, because we seem to be having a number of applications like this where approval is given and then the developers come back months or sometime afterwards and say, well, we need a private road for various reasons. And I think it's all very well, quoting policy documents. And I sometimes wonder, do the people that write these documents ever have to push pins backwards and forwards? So at the moment, I would be very pleased to hear a more detailed explanation from the officer, because I'm very sceptical, really, about what we've heard so far.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Like to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So certainly with respect to the structural impacts of the proposal, I haven't been presented with any kind of engineering report, any kind of structural report of that nature. I am really just going off the word of the developer in that case. I suppose that with respect to bin distances though and collection, we still don't have a planning decision or any kind of case law to say that we can use this as a reason for refusal. So I suppose my concern as an officer that if we were to go down that path, we might be unreasonable and that could open up a cost award. But again, if I could see a decision notice that countered that, then I'd be much more comfortable with refusing it on these kind of grounds.
Did you wish to speak again,
Well, I just don't accept what the officer says. I mean, what we have is in front of us now. What we've heard is hearsay, so there's no firm evidence that this is the case. Moreover, what we're saying is we're taking a step backwards. We've got a good design which maximises convenience presence. Now we're saying, oh, we're not going to take that into consideration. We're going to go for a second best decision. And I don't think that's acceptable, quite frankly. What I've heard from the office now, we have no firm evidence that this is the case. Therefore, we should refuse this on the grounds of poor design, and it is a retrograde step for the people who are going to occupy those houses. It's an extremely cynical thing, and it marks the future when we've got through our major issues at the moment, which of course are getting through the local plan and such like. We really need to think about supplementary planning guidance on this issue, because as Councillor Gorton has said, this comes back time and time again, and it is quite simply just wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Williams. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the question of people moving the bins down to the main road, the structure of that road must be inferior in design and the actual structure of the road. I mean, on my patch, we have a private road where the bin wagons go down. There's no problem with the servicing, seem to be wearing well. But again, that's passed on, and maintenance passed on to the residents. In this case, is it inferior? Is the materials going to be inferior? Is he going to have to make the road up in a proper way that could be taken on by the county council? And that's a concern. It has been for many, many years, where we're passing the buck all the time to residents who are spending their lifetime savings on a property and then have to then maintain the roads. In the case going back, we referred to my patch, we pay X amount of money per year, goes up and up and up, to a private company who should do the repairs and cut the edges and whatever, trees, tree back, maintain the trees, and they haven't done one thing. They haven't done nothing at all, yet residents are paying money time and time again for maintenance that doesn't happen. Now, in this case, I feel that why the developers come in, because the road will be an inferior design and materials used. Thank you.
Just, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is, and we have the portfolio holder here with us on the committee, that it is council policy that refuse vehicles do not go down private roads. Consequently, if we have a private road, it is of necessity that residents will have to drag their bins down that road to a collection point.
Councillor, are you able to answer that question? You feel comfortable to answer that?
Yeah, private roads and unadopted roads, then we don't go down. So then the residents will have to take the bin to a central point, which I echo what the other planning committee members have said this evening. I'm very disappointed that we have another application with unadopted or private roads. We seem to be getting more and more of these. I just wondered whether on the grapevine, Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council has been regarded as a soft touch, that you put in unadopted or private roads and you'll get it through and then you'll make more money. And yeah, I'd want to see more information on the actual quality of the road, the structure of the road, and how good the road is, because this could be a problem that's just going to come back and bite us and bite the residents in the, yeah.
Thank you for that, councillor. And officers wish to come back on those comments. Fine.
I think from our recommendation, we would rather go back to the developer and perhaps ask for some sort of structural report and perhaps give them the opportunity to amend the scheme to, if possible, to create more adoptable highways within the scheme, rather than see a refusal issued tonight if members are agreeable to that.
Can I just clarify that we can do that? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Fear, did you want to comment?
My interest in that is a very straightforward one. I mean, my opposition to this is the fact that we have an unadopted highway proposed here rather than the permission that's been given, which is for an adopted highway. I don't see that there is any room for compromise in that respect. We are told very often at this committee that we are voting on the proposal that's placed in front of us. It seems to me that were the developer to come back with a proposal that this was an adopted highway, that would be a new application. So I don't see what the room for manoeuvre is at this point. I could also add, Mr. Chairman, if I might, that it also seems to me that this is a discriminatory proposal in the sense that, once again, anyone who had disabilities who purchased one of those houses would then be forced to drag their bin down the road in a way that they wouldn't be if the current proposal or the current permission was simply enacted, which again seems to me another reason why we should simply turn this down. This is bad design. It is clearly against paragraph 139 of the NPPF. And as I say, I don't actually see where there is room for compromise in that respect.
Thank you, Councillor Fiat. Any members wishing to say something positive for the scheme in terms of balance? Councillor Crisp.
It's not quite positive, but I struggle to believe that there is not an alternative engineering solution to this pipe issue under the road, other than perhaps Charles, can you explain what is the problem? There's pipes under the road and they can't build a thick road, or how does this work?
So the first issue, obviously, see that the northern part of the site there's quite a steep drop in land levels. From what I've been told, that the original layout of the houses would have put too much pressure on the retaining walls, which maintain those land levels essentially. So that's the reason for the actual road layout change, the actual arrangement of houses. But the problem they have from that is that when they put the infrastructure under that new road layout, it's not to a standard which that Staffordshire County Councils will accept, if that makes sense. They're very specific in terms of how these pipes and drainage systems are put on the roads. So it's not to say it will be to a lower standard or anything like that, but it's just not Staffordshire County Council compliant, if that makes sense.
So, but you don't know exactly what the problem is, the technical problem.
No, beyond saying a sort of general words like infrastructure and pipes and things like that.
Just something wrong with the pipes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to make the point that really it's not for us to, or the developer isn't required to demonstrate with any evidence why they want to make the changes. That members are tasked with determining the application that's before them. It's somewhat irrelevant why the developer needs to do that. The developer has, as far as officers are concerned, has given us a satisfactory explanation for that. Whether members agree with that explanation or not, they have to consider the application on its merits as it is before them. It's not about doing a comparison of this one to the approved scheme and whether it's worse or better. Is the scheme before you now acceptable? If members feel that it isn't, and officers, as you know, don't agree that with your justification for why it's unacceptable, in that we would find it very difficult in our view to justify the harm because paragraph 139 of the NPPF does talk about development that's not well designed, but it also puts a lot of emphasis on where it fails to reflect local design policies, government guidance on design, taking into account any local design guidance, supplementary planning documents such as design codes and guides. And we don't have any of those. So in refusing this application, it would be solely on the grounds that it, in members' view, is poor design in accordance with the aims and objectives of the NPPF. So I don't want us to put too much emphasis on why they're doing it and whether we think we've got enough information on the structural merits of the scheme, because it's not something that we would insist on receiving, because it's not relevant to whether the scheme that's before us is acceptable or not.
Thank you, Chair. I think officers have touched on some of the points I was going to raise, but just from a personal point of view, I find it hard to make an informed decision on something without feeling informed. I do take your point that, officers, you don't have to ask for that, but it is hard to bear in mind if we can't bear it in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Yeah, I think I got the gist of that. Councillor Williams, Jill.
I think tonight, if we let this go through, we're actually saying to developers in an open invitation, come to Newcastle, you get your own way. And I don't think there's no merits for this development at all. And I don't think the officer's done his homework, to be quite honest.
Right.
Can I just come back on that, please, Chair?
Brief, yes.
I just repeating what I said previously, I don't think it's fair to criticise officers on that, because we did ask the question and the developer has provided us with an answer, and officers were satisfied with the information that they were given. But notwithstanding that, even if we didn't have an answer, the applicant has put forward a scheme and members have the information there to determine whether they consider that scheme is acceptable or not. So it's not that the officer hasn't done their homework.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor John Williams.
It's a question, Mr. Chairman. On private roads, does the developer have to put lighting in and drainage? And I'll go back to the area I represent. In 2 cases where there's no lighting, here's the drainage. No, who maintains that, I suppose? But whatever. So the question is, does the developer have to put in street lighting and drainage? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
As far as I'm aware, I don't think they have to provide lighting, but there is a sort of drainage scheme that's part of the wider site, which was conditioned, so that would still be applicable.
Thank you, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, can I put on record my concern that we seem to be increasingly in a position where our officers are being attacked in our meetings. At our previous meeting of the committee, a public speaker was saying some really quite outrageous things, and now members of the committee feel it appropriate to take issue with officers in terms that I think formally we would not have accepted. I think it's an extremely strong protocol, tradition that we don't attack officers. They're merely here to give us advice. And I think members of the Labour Party always used to consider themselves defenders of our officers rather than people who are needling away at them. In relation to the application, we've spoken quite a lot about the road and the engineering requirements associated with adopted highways. Now, clearly, to my mind, that is not what is on the mind of the applicant. If we look at what is on the screen, which is the comparative diagram, my guess is, and again, officers are welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, my guess is that the applicant is not saying, oh, goodness me, we can't build an adopted highway right up to the red line boundary, which is where a retaining wall is, because of engineering problems. What they are likely to be thinking is those 2 units to the extreme northeast, so there's one in red and one in grey, those cannot be constructed, or it is more difficult to construct those in accordance with the approved plans. And therefore, if they were to build out what has already been approved, they would be building it short of those 2 units. So they have come up with an alternative arrangement, which in their mind allows them to build out the same number of units, but all of those engineering problems go away because instead of supporting units, the retaining wall there is supporting the gardens belonging to several units. That is my best guess at a rationale that if I was the applicant, I will be putting in front of the committee. Having considered that, I agree entirely with Councillor Fear. I think that this is a refusable application, and if he is willing to move refusal, I'm willing to second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Holland, and point taken about personal attacks on officers. It shouldn't happen. Thank you. You may have your opinions, but I'm afraid this isn't a forum to attack officers in, and I don't think that's fair. Councillor Brown.
Put on record that I find it quite offensive that a councillor opposite has attacked the Labour group and said that we are attacking officers. I think that that is not acceptable, bringing party politics into this. We are trying to discuss whether this amendment is the right decision, and I think it should go to the vote, and I'd welcome that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brown. Right. Is this to do with planning, Councillor Fear? Okay, Councillor Fear, you may go ahead.
It is indeed to do with planning, Mr. Chairman, and indeed what I was going to say is I was trying to steer the meeting back to what we have. And let's strip away the sophistry from what's said. The opening phrase of paragraph 139 of the MPF says, and I quote, it's sitting on my phone in front of me, development that is not well designed should be refused. This is a development that is not well designed. I am going to move refusal on those grounds and on the grounds that this is discriminatory against those who are not physically able by creating a problem that was not there in the past. So I think this should be refused. As I say, I think it's a retrograde step. I'm deeply disappointed by this application, and I don't think this committee should accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. So we've had it formally proposed that we refuse this, and Councillor Holland, you stand by your second for that proposal. So the proposal is that this item is refused on the grounds of poor design and discriminatory nature. Can I see those in support of that, please? A show of hands. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That item is refused. Moving on to the next item of business, item 5 on the agenda, to be found on pages 17 to 28 of your agenda pack. Application for minor development, land the rear of 5 Morningside and 16 Lavrock Grove, Madeley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application for 2 dwellings in Madeley. So the application was deferred from a previous committee meeting, as members of the committee wish to see some additional information on the highways and access arrangements of the site. So I won't revisit the other planning considerations for this case, which have already been discussed. I'll just focus on the outstanding highways matters. So following discussions with the applicant, it's been confirmed that the roads surrounding the properties would be upgraded and built to an adoptable standard, but it will remain in private ownership with a management company being used for future maintenance. So for these type of smaller backlands developments, that is a common arrangement which we've used for other similar schemes within the borough. It's also been confirmed that the site will remain ungated and will be open for pedestrian use, meaning access through the site will still be available for local residents. In respect of the garages, which fall on the edge of the site, the applicant said that the intention would be for these to be retained and then likely repaired or replaced in the future so that they can be used by local residents for parking. With respect to bin collection, that would be at the junction with Morningside, so quite on the edge of the site in the bottom left corner of this planning drawing. So your officers feel that these updated details are satisfactory and that the highways matters are now considered to be acceptable. Subject to the original list of conditions as set out in the report being applied, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. We have 2 speakers on this item. First, I have Councillor Jill Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, you have 5 minutes to make your case. You'll be reminded at 4 minutes that you've got 1 minute left. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors. Can I just emphasise the points I made at the last meeting, which still need to be addressed? The plans are still not to scale, as no alterations have been made from the last plan to help residents who have their drives coming onto this site due to the narrow road of Birchdale, which they can't park or pull out of. Excuse me. Parking of vehicles will be taken away, so this will impact the surrounding roads. The access for children, as I know you said, they're going to get the access, but if it is redirected, it'll be very dangerous for them to go around. The access will be tight, so there will be no turnaround for emergency vehicles or delivery drivers who have to use it for deliveries to Birchdale due to Birchdale being too narrow to access or turn as the very, very narrow cul-de-sac. The problem with the bins being wheeled out and put on Morningside, it's on a busy crossroad with Lavrock Grove, and that will cause other problems. Regarding the access to Birchdale, that they've addressed that, the shops. Just wanted to know if highways have been out to see the site, or if they've decided in the office that the site would be okay, as I don't think it is. Another one, it's unlit and dark, so street light would have to be used and renewed there, which will impact on the surrounding houses already present. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmore. You may resume your seat. Next, we have a supporter of the scheme, Mr. Rob Duncan, who's speaking on behalf of the agent. You may begin, Mr. Duncan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. This application seeks outline consent for the erection of 2 dwellings on a parcel of previously developed land within the settlement boundary of Madeley. And within such areas, the principle of residential development is wholly acceptable and in accordance with the policies of your development plan. The local authority's housing policies are furthermore out of date, meaning that the presumption in favour of sustainable development is engaged by this proposal. This means that planning permission should be approved unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development when assessed against the NPPF taken as a whole. The indicative layout plan accompanying the application demonstrates how the proposed dwellings could be arranged within the site. There are other examples of properties being provided in setback locations similar to this within the surrounding area, including those nearby to the rear of Bramble Lee. Consequently, the proposal will not be at odds with the wider character and appearance of the area. And it's furthermore noted that the Conservation Officer has raised no objections to the proposal. A layout of development can be delivered on the site in a manner which will meet your adopted space about dwelling standards and thus avoid any adverse impact on neighbouring residential amenity. And the scheme will also deliver a net gain to biodiversity of some 57%, which is far in excess of the statutory requirement of 10%. Turning to the main issue raised during the previous committee meeting when the application was deferred, I wish to highlight first and foremost that the land to which this application is subject is wholly within the private ownership of the applicant. We are aware that numerous objections have been raised about loss of parking upon this site, and you've heard some of those this evening. But as this is private land, neighbours do not have a right to park upon it. The only legal rights that some neighbours have is to access their properties for maintenance. Whilst parking on the land may have occurred casually, it is unauthorised and they have no legal right to do so. Indeed, if the applicant was so inclined, he could take steps to prevent parking on the land in the future, irrespective of the outcome of this application. And that is the legal position, and it's important that members are aware of it. I can nevertheless confirm the applicant's intention to renovate the garages and offer them for use by local residents. Turning to other highways-related matters, the road will be upgraded and widened compared to that which currently exists and built as close to adoptable standards as is possible within the constraints of the site. But it will remain in private ownership as full adoptable standard is not achievable in this location due to the access width for a short length of the driveway. However, this is not an unusual arrangement, as you've heard from the planning officer, and it's common throughout the borough, particularly on smaller housing schemes. Indeed, the road into and out of this site is already in private ownership and maintained privately at present. A management company will be established to ensure the ongoing and future maintenance of the road, and the occupiers of the properties will be members of that management company. Pedestrian connectivity through the site will be retained so as to allow local residents direct access through the site as they currently do. If members have a concern about lighting, a condition can be imposed to deal with this, possibly under the guise of condition 7 in the recommendation before you. A bin collection point is to be provided at the junction with Morningside for occupiers to leave their bins out on collection day. This will be 36 metres from the properties, and there is ample space within the site for vehicles to turn. In consideration of these matters of highway safety, I draw particular attention to the response of the local highway authority. The local authority have not raised any objections to the application, and that is a very important factor as it is they who have the responsibility for matters of highway safety within the borough. Refusing planning permission on the grounds of highway safety or perceived loss of parking, contrary to the recommendation of the local highway authority, would not be a reasonable course of action for this committee to take. The proposal before you is acceptable from a highway safety perspective, as confirmed by the local highway authority. It will furthermore deliver 2 dwellings to help meet the local authority shortfall in housing land, and will do so using a previously developed site, something which the NPPF specifically seeks to encourage. Making beneficial reuse of sites such as this helps to reduce the need for greenfield sites to be released to provide new housing. The proposal is accepted in all other planning respects, and consequently we submit there is a compelling case for planning permission to be granted. I would therefore urge members to endorse the recommendation of your officers and grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. You may resume your seat, please. Over to members. Councillor John Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I right in saying that walking access through this site is going to be agreed? That's firstly. I'm allowed to come back. There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it'll be retained. So access throughout the site for pedestrians would still be allowed. Yeah.
But it's always been mentioned it's going to be a gated development, which I can understand.
Sorry, Councillor, just for clarity, it'll be ungated.
It's ungated.
Yes, yeah, sorry, yeah.
I was concerned that, yeah, we allow people to walk through, and then if you put gates up, we'll be locked. So it won't be gated, so residents will be able to walk through, especially the children going to school and that. Thank you.
Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think what we've heard this evening does address some of the concerns that were raised by the committee last time. So pedestrian access, as I recall, was something which people were very concerned about, and we've been assured by the plan and indeed the public speaker that that is not going to be a problem. Equally, this is a piece of private land, and we really do need to remember that. So casual parking upon this land, frankly, is neither here nor there. The owner could put a gate on there tomorrow, and they would be perfectly within their rights to do so. In that regard, we're left with a curiosity. I'm not sure, and of course we've got to remember that these are outline plans, and no doubt a full application will come back to us in due course. I'm not personally convinced that were I to be rich enough, I would purchase property in this particular situation, but there may be people who are happy to do so. In that respect, I can see myself no reason why we can object to this. There is no loss of public amenity in parking, which is something which was raised last time, but as has rightly been said, and I've come across these things in my own ward and adjacent wards, where this problem, if it is a problem, exists, but nonetheless, private property is private property, and there will remain, and in fact, as far as I can see from what we've read in our report, in improved pedestrian access in some ways. And in that respect, I can see no reason to oppose the application that's in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. I'm afraid I also agree with your comments. Any other councillors wishing to speak on this? Councillor Hodgson.
Could I just ask the officer to, the 36 metres for the bends, taking them down into the street, does the building regulations say that it can't be more than 30? And does that have a bearing on anything this evening? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think it's a recommendation within building regs. I don't know if it's sort of a set in stone policy though, really.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, linking into what Councillor Fear said there about problems of access, in my ward, this has arisen quite a lot. I thought it was interesting that although we can't go on loss of amenity, and there will be parking provided there. 2 questions: if the garages are provided and will be offered to residents, on what basis would that be? And secondly, in terms of, I think it was said that there'd be maintenance, there'd be access required for maintenance. What form would that take, please?
Are you able to answer that, Charles?
So in terms of the arrangements for the access for parking, it's not something that we would need to know the information on, because it's outside of the planning application. So it would be a separate issue that would be between the landowner and those people who wanted to use those spaces. And again, with in terms of the access for maintenance of properties, it's not something that we would need to know the details of, but presumably it's to maintain their rear fences or hedgerows, etc. It would be something like that.
Thank you. I think for goodwill between adjacent residents and development, though, these kind of issues, it's important that we think about them, because in terms of planning enforcement, I know we've had some difficulties with these in my ward. But thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay, I think I know where this is going. I think over the 2 meetings that we've had, I think we've interrogated this planning application very thoroughly. And I think that we asked the questions at the beginning of the evening, following on from the previous planning committee meeting, and the questions have been largely answered by the applicant. If Councillor Fear is minded to propose that this is acceptable and we should approve the scheme from the chair, I am happy to second that.
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So in the absence of any other proposals, when it formally proposed that we accept this and approve it, I'm happy to second that. Can I see a show of hands in support of this, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. That item is passed. Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, to be found on pages 29 to 34 of your agenda pack. Application for other development, International House, Stubgate, Newcastle.
Thank you, Chair. So members, I'm sure will remember, planning permission was granted last year on a temporary 12-month basis for the change of use of this former office building to a homeless hub and HMO shelter for homeless people. So this application seeks permission for the variation of 3 of the conditions of that planning permission. Condition 2 lists the approved plans. Condition 6 relates to compliance with a noise impact assessment, and condition 7 relates to use of external plant. So looking first at condition 2, which lists the approved plans, limited changes are proposed to the elevations. I've got it's a bit difficult to see the scale that they are, but so this is what's proposed now, and if I just flip between the 2. So this is what was proposed previously, so or what was approved, sorry. So this is the front elevation at the top left. There's no changes at all proposed to that elevation. This elevation here is just bear with me a second. That is the rear elevation facing the the alleyway and the properties behind. And the changes to that is, just show you on back to that one. So that's what's proposed now, and that was what's proposed previously. So these two windows here have been omitted, and a high level vent has been added on the rear elevation. And that's to do with fire regulations. And then there's some very minor changes to fenestration on these two elevations here, which are the courtyard elevations. So facing inwards to the car parking area. Again, minor changes, but I'll just flip between them. If you look at this elevation here first, so you can see that along this ground floor elevation, that's an archway that runs through the building, but you can see there that there's a door and two small windows, but again, these are just facing onto the car park. And then looking at the bottom elevation, just minor changes there to the window arrangement there and the location of this door. So you can see there very minor changes. So your officer's view is that the proposed amendments, which are required to adhere to current fire regulations, are minimal, and therefore there would be no impact on the character and appearance of the area. So the other conditions, a revised noise impact assessment has been submitted, which is referenced in condition 6. So at the moment, condition 6 sets out the name of the original noise impact assessment, and that's being updated as being considered by our Environmental Health Division. They're satisfied with the conclusions of that report. So the only reason that this needs to be changed is just to make reference to that updated report. And then the same with condition 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Over to members. Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think these are very minor changes. The vast majority of them are inward facing, so they will have no effect on neighbours in that regard. I note environmental health are perhaps the most important one of these is the noise assessment. Environmental health are happy with that. Consequently, I would like to move approval of this application on the grounds that these are very minor changes, and I don't think they're going to have any deleterious effect on the neighbours.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Okay, in that case, Councillor Fear has formally proposed that we accept this recommendation permit, subject to the following conditions highlighted in the report. I'm happy to second that from the chair. Can I see a show of hands, please, in support of this? And I think that's unanimous again. Thank you, members. Moving on, next item on the agenda is item 7, found on pages 35 to 40. Application for other development, Forge Cottage, Brampton Road, Newcastle. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. So this is a very minor householder application that comes before you on the grounds that it's being submitted by a member of staff. So planning permission is sought for the erection of a new fence at this property, which is within the Brampton Conservation Area. So the Brampton Road runs to the left of the screen. That's the former NatWest RBS building. And these are properties that set back from the road and aren't visible from the road. So the fence would be sited on top of an existing low wall, which encloses the rear garden of the property. This is the existing elevation here, and this is the proposal. So that's the front view. So you can see the fence there on top of the wall. This is the side elevation. You can see existing there with an existing panel to the right, and the proposal is to add panels onto the top there. So the existing wall is about 1.1 metres high. The proposed fence would be 0.6 metres high, so a total height of 1.7, which would link into the existing close-boarded fence, which encloses the remainder of the rear garden of the property. So just a couple of photos. This is the kind of entrance into these properties, the group of properties. The work has actually already been carried out. So there's the wall with the fence on the top, and a closer shot there where you can see down the side and how it joins into the existing fences. So it's given its scale, its position set back from Brampton Road, and the presence of other similar forms of enclosure in the locality, it's considered that the fence would have no impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Any councillors wishing to speak on this item? I'll take Councillor Holland first, just for variation, and then Councillor Fear. Thank you.
Seems policy compliant and acceptable to me. Move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Fear.
I was going to say exactly what Councillor Holland had said. So I'm happy to second this. I do just the rider. It would have been nice for the applicant, and it's quite right. It comes here for the case of transparency. Otherwise, I know it wouldn't have done. But that's a good thing. But it would have been nice to wait for the approval, wouldn't it? I don't like retrospective stuff. So yeah, I say let's say approve, but a little slap over the knuckles, perhaps.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fear. So we've had it formally proposed by Councillor Holland and seconded by Councillor Fear that we should accept this. Can I see a show of hands in support of the application? And that's unanimous. Thank you, members. That item is approved. Old favourite on the agenda, item 8, Boggs Cottage. Members are drawn to pages 41 to 42. There's been a little bit of update on the report there. Are members content to receive the information as printed and to keep it on the agenda for future? Can I see a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Item 9 on the agenda is urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business. I have no urgent business, and I'm seeing nods to the contrary on that. So I'm happy to move on for that. No disclosure of exempt information, which leads me to bring the evening to a close. I now announce that the meeting is closed. Thank you, members. Have a safe journey home. Thank you, officers. Thank you. Good night.